Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to go over EC135 mast flange bushings. That's on the hub shaft flange. It's the upper and lower flange bushings. They also call them flange bearings. There's many different types of these bushings. So we're going to go over where to find what's the right part number. There's about 5 or 6 different part numbers. The newer style has Teflon lining on the inside and outside. We're going to go over that. We're going to go over how to install it. It's pretty easy. The old style, which is bare metal on the outside, it has to get pushed in and you need a special tool for that, and it's kind of not an easy thing to do. But the newer style is pretty easy. It's version 2, but we're going to go over all of that. We're going to go over why the Teflon flakes off sooner than it should. It's usually because people put TP42 all over the main rotor blade bolt when they jam it in. Too much TP42 will screw it up. But we're going to go over all this in the maintenance manual, and there's 3 service bolt-ins. We're only going to go over 1 pretty quickly because that's an easy way to find the correct part number. I spent a crap ton of time making this video. When I started putting it all together, it was all crap, so I had to dump it and start all over again. So anyway, this one took an extremely long time to make, which is too bad for me. Boo-hoo, right? Cry me a river. Anyway, quick disclaimer, then we're going to get straight into the maintenance manual, all right, before we begin, a quick disclaimer. I'm not affiliated with any aircraft manufacturers. I make these videos for entertainment, not education. Always refer to the manufacturer's maintenance instructions and not this video or any other videos on this channel. If there is something said in this video that is contrary to the maintenance manual, defer to the maintenance manual. Maintenance manuals are being revised all the time. Check current revisions prior to completing any maintenance on your aircraft. That being said, thank you for watching and let's roll. All right, before we dive into the maintenance manual, we're just going to go over why we're actually doing this. And the reason is when you go take your main rotor blades off of the helicopter to do whatever inspection you're about to do, like if you're going to do a spacer tube inspection or do something with the mast, if you take the blades off, there's a good chance you'll see some stuff screwed up, okay? You'll see the mast flange bushings, or the hub shaft flange bushings all screwed up. The Teflon will be flaking off. If you have your blade off, look at the blade bushings. Inside the blades, the 2 bushings that the main rotor blade bolts go through. If they're shifted at all, you could see one side is lower than the other or whatever, or if one side's sticking out. You'll know it when you take it off. If it sticks up too far, it'll wear a groove into the flange bushings, and it will essentially lock the main rotor blade into place, and it'll be hard to get it out. It just requires a little bit of finesse to get that done, all right? And this is stuff you weren't expecting to do when you were going to take your blades off. Obviously, if you see your main rotor blade bushings screwed up, then you're going to have to get the tools to change those out. Also, the Teflon lining on the top and the bottom of your blades that slides into the hub shaft. If that's all scratched up or damaged, then you're going to need to replace that, and that's a decent job to do too. You're going to need special tools for that. It takes a minute to do. But anyway, that's why we're going into this. All right, first thing we're going to go to is we're going to go into the maintenance manual. AMM, Aircraft Maintenance Manual, 623100 8-7. That's it's 8-7 and 8-8. 8-7 is the replacement of the upper flange bushings. It's variant 2, the main rotor shaft. All right, this is for the upper. Chapter 8-8 is for the lower. It's essentially the same. Scroll down a little bit. Of course, the first thing they want you to do is take the main rotor blades off, but you've already established that because you found a problem, right? All right, after the first thing is this first thing. Find the type of the installed flange bushing. Go to a different chapter, AMM 623100 8-5. All right, let's go there. 8-5, it's a warning. It says, risk of accident during flight if you install different types of flange bushings. Make sure that you install only one type of the flange bushings, right? You can't have multiple different part numbers, flange bushings in the mast. And make sure you have the right one that fits the right oversize of your mast. So if we scroll down, it says install the flange bushings in the rotor hub as follows. And then it says find the type of the installed flange bushings. How do you do that? On the identifier on the rotor hub shaft assembly, or you could look in the logbook of the helicopter. Well, it's not in my logbook of my helicopter. Next, it says refer to table 1 to find the correct removal and installation procedure for the flange bushings. All right, so go to table 1. The column on the left side is the part number for your mast or identifier that's on your mast. Pretty much everyone in our fleet that I've seen recently has the new style that's already complied with the service bulletin. So we're on the very bottom row. Upper flange variant 2 references you to the chapter 8-7 Lower flange is also variant 2, references you to chapter 8-8. All the other ones on here are variant 1 or variant 1 oversized. All right, so we're going to go back to the maintenance manual, but first we're going to go to the service bulletin, because the service bulletin shows you the part number, the correct part number. It's easier to find it there than it is in the IPC, but we'll go see that later too, okay? There's 3 different service bulletins. The one that we're concerned with right now is this one here, which is EC135 62036, the rework of the upper and lower hub shaft flange. All right, this came out in 2015 in July, and I'm gonna read the summary right here. It says, by means of this service bulletin, rework can be performed on the main rotor hub shafts, which are affected by the ASB 62A029. This eliminates the need for the visual inspection of the upper and lower hub shaft flanges every 50 hours, according to the ASB, which is cool. But if you have a helicopter that operates or it's a United States registered aircraft, then you still have to follow the AD. So if you go look up the AD, old Federal Registrar, and the only place it tells you the AD number is, if you scroll down a little bit on the right side, document number AD 2014-16-24. It says, for main rotor hub shafts with 400 or more hours time in service within 50 hours and thereafter at intervals not to exceed 50 hours, do this inspection. No big deal. We've all been doing that for a long time now anyway, right? All right, if we go back to the service bulletin, compliance. Compliance with the service bulletin is optional. The rework may only be accomplished by ZF, they're the ones who make the transmission in the mast, or by a service station authorized by Airbus. So this isn't something we're going to be doing, but the part numbers are in here. So it's an easy place to find the right part number. And the rework of the mast, you're not even going to know what the procedure is for that, because they don't send out that information. It's design document Lima 623 Mike 1003881. And that's the number that's going to be written on your mast. But just a little bit more information on this service bulletin. It says, in the course of the rework, all boreholes located in the lower and upper hub shaft flanges are enlarged so that they have a uniform diameter. Teflon bonded flange bushings are then pressed into the boreholes. So we're still in the service bulletin. You scroll down to the parts, and it shows you the new parts and the old parts. There's a whole bunch of different old parts, but the new parts for the flange bushing there's 16 of them, and they're all the same, upper and lower. 8 on the top, 8 on the bottom, 4 for each blade. The part number that's in our system is Lima 623 Mike 13 Tango 1201. The other part number isn't in our system. So that's the part number you would order, but you also need to order the matching washer, okay? Because there's 2 separate part number washers. If you scroll down more, it says the re-identification of the main rotor hub shaft. Like I said, they want you to, not you, but when you get the new mast or it's been reworked according to the service bulletin, it will be marked with this document number, Lima 623 Mike 1003881. Okay, just a quick once over on what we've just been talking about. So if you have the number L623 Mike 1003881 written on the upper side of your lower mast flange, then the mast that you're working with has already been complied with the service bulletin. And the mast flange bushing part numbers that you're going to want to order are L623 Mike 13 Tango 1201. And if you order that flange bushing, then you're going to also need this washer, L623 Mike 13 Tango 2201. Things get revised all the time, so just make sure you double check before you order. Don't blame me if you order the wrong stuff, okay? Cool. Okay, if we scroll down just a little bit more past the part numbers, well, there was a note on the part number for the washers and the flange bushings. It was note A or remark A. Remark A, if you scroll down, it says, when performing rework of the lower and upper hub shaft flange in accordance with the service bulletin 62036, only parts with the following part numbers can be used in combination. There's combination 1 and a combination 2. So make sure you match up your washers with your bushings with the correct part number matchup combination, all right? If you don't, it's going to screw stuff up. They probably won't fit together. I have no idea. Combination 2 is what I've seen. We'll take a look at the IPC in a little bit, but right now we're going to go back to the maintenance manual, chapter 8-7, which talks about the upper flange bushing. Chapter 8-8 is the lower flange bushing. They're pretty much the same. But the thing is here, let me backtrack. I don't think I've ever changed the new style, but I was there when it was changed, and talking to two guys who've done it in two different locations recently, they said that the new style that has the Teflon lining bonded to it on the outside, it just slides in. So in the maintenance manual, it tells you to make supporting tool for the replacement of the related flange bushing. And it references you to an AMM chapter 2, how to make this tool. And then it gives you a huge warning on don't hit this tool with your rubber mallet too hard or you're going to damage the mast flange or you'll damage the Teflon. But the washers and the flanges pretty much come out by hand. They're not pressed in. Okay, so maybe this tool is just to help with the alignment, but I haven't seen any difficulties putting the new ones in. All right. But when you go to install the new ones, it says, oh, risk of frostbite, cold parts can give you frostbite. They want you to drop the new flange bushings into dry ice and cool it off. They want you to heat up the mast flanges to whatever temperature, like 110 degrees, something like that. It's in here. But I haven't had any problems. My understanding is that they just go in by hand. But there's a couple other things that we need to read about other than that. I'm going to read it word for word because it's kind of funny. Use a lint-free cloth made moist with cleaning agent CM203 to clean the installation position of the flange bushings in the rotor hub shaft flange. Got it. What's CM203? CM203 is acetone. Okay, cool. So once you got it clean, once you have the flanges out, once you have the flange bushings out, you clean it with acetone, with a rag with acetone on it, and you look for cracks. Do an inspection. It gives you a chapter. Do an inspection of the installation position of the flange bushings in the rotor hub shaft assembly. It gives you a chapter, 6231006-3. Go there. Do the inspection. Next, apply anti-corrosion agent CM518, that's the new style Masanox, to the mating surfaces of the flange bushing and the rotor hub shaft flange. CM518 is CA1010-1160. That's the new style Masanox. And where do they want it to go? Just do a thin layer, do it around the mast flange, and slide it in. Okay, so I called up the tech rep to say, hey man, are we actually supposed to put Masanox on these new flange bushings that have the Teflon? And he got back to me in a couple days and he was like, yes. And so I guess the new style Masanox won't wreck the Teflon like TP42 will. Just a heads up. All right, now they say to cool it down to negative 58 degrees Fahrenheit, heat up the mast flange to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Then it says put and hold the mast flange bushing to its installation position on the rotor hub shaft assembly. Okay. And then they want the tool, I guess, to make sure it is seated. Don't hit it with a hammer. Don't hit it too hard. You'll screw up the Teflon. No worries. Effectivity all. Use a lint-free cloth to remove the unwanted anti-corrosion agent from the flange bushing and the rotor hub shaft flange assembly. Got it. So yeah, clean it up. Don't leave that new style Masanox just sitting around up there. All right. If you remove the washer on the top and the rotor blade assembly at the same time, you can install the washer with the rotor blade assembly. Paragraph J says, if you remove the washer with the flange bushing at the same time, install the washer according to 6231008-9. But if you look on the left where all the chapters are, there is no 8-9. So I don't know what they're talking about, but no big deal, because when you go to the chapter that talks about installing the main rotor blade bolts, it talks about this washer. Okay, so let's go to removal and installation of the main rotor blade bolt, AMM 6211004-1. It says clean the blade bolt and mating bore in the bushing of the hub shaft flanges and the bore in the bushing of the main rotor blade using acetone. Okay, so don't get crazy and soak that whole thing in acetone. Just wipe it off with a rag with acetone, okay? Pretty sure that acetone will screw up the Teflon. So dial it back a little bit, all right? Next, apply a thin layer of lubricant, CM146. What is that? That's TP42. Onto the threads and contact surfaces of the bolt head of the blade bolt. What you don't want to do is put a whole bunch of TP42 on the threads and on the contact surface of the blade bolt, like it says, and jam it in there, okay? Because if you do, if it's way too thick, the TP42 that's on the threads is just going to smear all over the inside of the main rotor blade bushing and everything else, and it's going to get onto the Teflon, and the next time you go take your blades off, the Teflon's just going to flake right off. All right. So what I recommend doing is put TP42 on the blade bolt where it contacts the top washer, but put it thin on the contact surface, not on the shank of the bolt. And if you put it on thick, when you smash it down, it's a really tight fit, and it's going to squeeze in between the mast flange bushings and the blade bolt, and that's not where you want it. You want it where the metal to metal contact is. And then once you have the blade bolt installed, then you could put some on the threads. But if you put a crap ton on the threads, when you thread the bolt on, it's going to push all the excess up inside the lower flange bushing and screw up that Teflon. So you could probably go ahead and put some on the nut, or just make a real thin layer and put it on the threads of the bolt. But I don't see why there'd be a problem putting it on the nut and not the bolt. All right? That's just my 2 cents. I say this because the mast flange bushings are like $500 a piece, and the washers are like $200 a piece, and you need 16 of each. So that's, well, if they're wrecked, you'll need 16 of each. That adds up to be a lot of money. So moving forward with the main rotor blade bolt install, it says only install washers 7 and 8, that's on the top and the bottom, in a clean state. If the washers are coated with Teflon, the side coated with Teflon must be in contact with the hub shaft flange. If removed, position washer number 8 on flange bushing on the upper hub shaft flange. That's what we were talking about before. It said if you remove this with the main rotor blade, you can put it on now, and that's what we're doing. Not a big deal. The flange bushing extends past the flange just a tiny bit, the same thickness as the washer. Then it says insert the blade bolts in the hub shaft flange of the main rotor shaft and in the main rotor blade so that the nut flat of the blade bolt head is in contact with the base plate of the hubcap support, acting as a torsion lock. You'll know, okay, look, you're going to have the blade up there. I didn't obviously go over that yet. I'm not going to. You're going to have the blade up there. You're going to line up the holes, and you're going to do everything that we said about the TP42, and then you're going to slide the blade bolt in. Not a big deal. And the head of the blade bolt, one of the flats of the bolt, is going to match up with the flat side of the hubcap support. And if the blade bolt isn't all the way down flush, then you'll obviously see that, right? And then you have the guy who's holding the blade on the outside, just wiggle it around a little bit, and then while you're pushing down on the blade bolt, and it'll just go in. All right, then it says, if removed, position washer 7 on the blade bolt. That's on the bottom. So when you're going back on with it, just make sure it goes around the flange bushing and doesn't butt up against the flange bushing. I know that doesn't make sense. Here's a picture. So on the left side of this picture where it's green, that's the way it's supposed to be. On the right side of this picture, there's a gap. The nut is pinching the washer against the flange bushing. The washer is not where it's supposed to be around the flange bushing. It's on top of it, if that makes sense. Honestly, that's pretty much it. But right here, it says screw on the nut onto the blade bolt and tighten the torque to 532 inch-pounds to 708 inch-pounds. Always check the manual just in case it gets revised out. Next, it says from inboard to outboard in the direction of the blade tip, insert the 2 safety pins through each assembled blade bolt and nut. It says the arched arm of the safety pin must lock into place in the groove of the nut. Not complicated. Just like these pictures here. Just be careful. You know, I know a guy, every time he'd get a spare, he'd look at these and he'd find 1 or 2 of them screwed up and he'd make a big deal about it. Just because they may not be perfectly inboard to outboard, or they may be crossed or something like that. One might be on top of the other on one side and on the bottom on the other side. Anyway, just make sure they look good. Anyway, that's pretty much it, but we need to go over the IPC so that we could find again really where the part number is. So IPC 6231-10-01 Delta, rotor hub shaft pre-assembly with SGB. That's the strain gauge bridge. That's for the mass moment. And there's like 4 different sections over here, but the one that we're looking at is for the pre-assembly. So the other 3 give you a whole bunch of different part numbers. Either way, we're looking at item 30A and 20A. That's the flange bearing or flange bushing. They call it flange bearing here, and the washers. And if you scroll down, say click item 30A, it says only in combination with 20A. Okay, so you gotta have the right part numbers like the note said before in the service bulletin. So make sure you order the right ones. I could see how you could easily order 30A and then 20 because you didn't scroll down and look at the description and look at like what it means. Okay, so 30A and 20A go together, 30 and 20 go together, just like was in the service bulletin that we talked about where it had the remarks. And I could see how that could get easily overlooked. I think that probably they won't fit, but who knows? Anyway, that's it for the video. I know it was long. I know my disclaimer is 30 seconds of your life you'll never get back, and I know that this video is 20 minutes of your life you'll never get back, but hopefully you found some value in it. Hopefully watching this video will prevent you from ordering the wrong parts and then being out of service for an extra day or two because you have the wrong parts. That's the main reason I'm doing this. And don't put TP42 all over the blade bolt because you're gonna wreck that stuff. And then the next time you take it off, like I recently just was involved in, 6 months later, they take the blades off and all the Teflons, pretty much all the Teflons on the bushings are wrecked. But the main rotor blade bushings were fine, just mast flange bushings. Blah, blah, blah. Sorry about all that. I hope you guys found value in this video. And if you know of anybody who might find this interesting, share it with them. I'd appreciate it. And I'll see you guys next time. Later.